Hello and welcome back. Eddie Radosevich, George Stoya here for, I guess, what will be the final installment before we head down to Dallas. Welcome into a Thursday game day edition of the Gameday Preview here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. A really fun conversation with our good buddy Joe Cook from Inside Texas, kind of previewing everything from the Longhorn side of things. Obviously, the Longhorns coming into this one, the number one ranked team in the country for the first time in 40 years, George, and it's kind of here. I think that, like, once you get to Thursday, right, you start getting into OU Texas weekend. I know a lot of people, including my parents, headed down to Dallas today.
Yeah, I know a ton of people heading down on Thursday.
Thursday used to be the big day.
Oh, yeah. That's when I used to go down as a student.
Absolutely.
So I know you and I are getting out of town tomorrow morning. I'm going to have a good time on Friday evening. Yeah, it's here. It feels like this week is always so long. Like, it does not go by quick. Every single day there's a new talking point. I mean, the availability report, if we want to talk about that.
Yeah, let's get into it. First, let's tell you about this great flash sale that we have here on SoonerScoop.com. All you got to do is go to SoonerScoop.com, 50% off an annual subscription. A lot of, obviously really good content coming out this week on OU and Texas. Basketball, softball's firing up with the Battle Series. Bob Przybyla was over there yesterday. So just all you got to do is go to SoonerScoop.com, a special edition here for you guys out there in the YouTube world. 50% off annual membership. And who knows, maybe OU will win. All you got to do is promo code BOOMER. Promo code BOOMER. And we even talked to Sam Bradford. I know that you have a story coming out tomorrow talking about kind of the historical factor going into this game. We'll have plenty more on Mike Hawkins, hearing from some of his teammates, as well as Brent Venables going into this game. He's going to be the first freshman to start. 6 of those redshirt freshmen have played in the game at the quarterback position. Sam was one of those guys. Yep. We'll talk about Mike Hawkins and everything with the Oklahoma offense here in a second. First things first, we did have the first availability report come out on Wednesday night. And some good news, maybe some unexpected news, and then we'll get to the bad. The unexpected news, though, no Taylor Tatum, which, it makes you think he should be available to play on Saturday.
That's by definition, if somebody is not on there, that means they are technically available to play. So expectation is that he will be out there. We'll see if he pops up on it on Thursday or Friday. But, I was a little surprised he wasn't on there just because he was on there, back in the Auburn week, and it was eventually ruled out. So I thought maybe he'd be on there as listed as questionable or probable, but not on there. So you expect him to play on Saturday. The bad news for Oklahoma, Deion Burks was on there listed as questionable, but then today Pete Thamel of ESPN reporting that he is not expected to play. So Oklahoma will be down their top 5 wide receivers again, which, look, I think you and I were optimistic about Deion Burks early in the week, maybe even last week, thinking, maybe he could get back. But as the week progressed, you and I had both heard the same things we'd put on the Crimson Corner, written in some of our stories, that he had not practiced. And when a guy starts to just not practice during the week, it's usually a bad sign of things maybe aren't progressing as well as they'd hoped. And also, I think Brent, when he spoke on his coach's show on Monday, the way he phrased, hey, we're going to see where he's at in a couple days, and we're hoping to get back some guys in a few weeks, that made me think, okay, I don't think there's a lot of hope that he's going to play on Saturday.
It's kind of unbelievable just in terms of when you look at the roster and all the guys that are out, obviously the wide receivers that, obviously somebody like a Jaden Gibson, or an Andrell Anthony, Nick Anderson, Jalil Farouk. I mean, it's just amazing what's happened to that wide receiver position.
It's terrible. I mean, it's completely decimated, depleted. It's a group that you now have to say, and we've been saying it for weeks, other guys have to step up, whether that's, Brennan Thompson or J.J. Hester. Maybe they found something in those two guys a week ago. Jaquez Petaway, it sounds like maybe we'll see more Jacoby Johnson this week, but tough blow for Oklahoma. Hopefully Taylor Tatum can give it a go. I think that could help the running game a little bit. I think that OU's going to have to really lean on the run game in a game like this. So, what's the stat? Is it the last 25 games, the team that leads?
Last 25 years, the cliche line, right, going into OU Texas week, something that anybody that has paid attention to this game over the years would know, that the team that runs the ball the best is usually the team that wins the game. And I think that the numbers would support that. Over the last 25 years, the team that has won the rushing battle is 23-1-1. Since
there you go.
I think we figured out 1999, right?
Yep, something like that. So it's insane. And I think from the Texas point of view, I'm sure they're going to say, they're going to try and shut down the run and say, beat us with your arm, beat us with your 5 wide receivers that are out and, a true freshman quarterback. So
sure.
It's definitely one of those battles that it's going to be interesting to see how both sides approach it.
The good news is, and when you see like the length of the guys that are out for Oklahoma, there was only one offensive lineman, and it was Garen Hatchett. Obviously, he had the surgery on, the elbow, I believe, I think it was right at the beginning of the season, right after the Temple game, right? Going into the Houston game. Everybody else, though, it seems, and we talked to Jake Taylor last week. He was one of the guys that had been battling, finally got back out into the field against Auburn. Offensive line-wise, they are probably about as healthy as they've been.
Definitely, and that's huge when you talk about having a true freshman quarterback and needing to run the ball in this game to help him out. Writing that story that I wrote this week on Michael Hawkins, talking to guys like Sam Bradford, Justin Fuente, Tink Collins, all guys who started as redshirt freshmen in this game. They all kind of said the same thing. We were able to run the football when they played, right? Like they were able to run the football, turn around, hand it off. Justin Fuente was talking about the big 1996 upset game. He was able to turn around and hand it off to James Allen and Damon Parker, and they rushed for, I think, almost 300 yards in that game.
Two pretty good options in the backfield. Yeah.
And so if Oklahoma can all of a sudden, not have to just totally rely on Michael Hawkins pushing the ball down the field, and they can run it a little bit, whether that's Michael or that's, Javonte Barnes, Taylor Tatum, Gavin Sawchuk, who really hasn't been a huge part of their rushing attack. Maybe he is this week. I think that could be huge. And so when you talk about a healthy offensive line, protecting Michael Hawkins, but also maybe getting some push in this run game, maybe Oklahoma offensively can find some success.
It's interesting. As much as we've talked about Oklahoma's inefficiency and being able to run the football, there were some glimpses in that Auburn game, and maybe because they had the bye week last week, you've forgotten about that. But we really haven't talked a whole lot about Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk going into this game and an offensive line that, somewhat did take a step. I don't know how big of a step, but they did take a step at Auburn.
They definitely did, and I think that you expect them to do that again this week. Texas's defensive front is definitely not as good as they were a year ago. I think they've got some really good young talent, especially on the edges. Colin Simmons is going to be a problem. He's going to get in the backfield a few times. Like, that's just a reality. But up the middle, they're not as good as they were a year ago without Sweat and Murphy. And so
Broughton and Alfred Collins have had good seasons, though.
Yeah, they've had really good season. But I don't think that this is a Texas defensive line that's better than what they saw against Tennessee. Now, Oklahoma didn't move the ball against Tennessee very well. But I do think that if you can add some different wrinkles, maybe get some push up front, maybe Branson Hickman is starting to feel a little bit better on that bum ankle, as well as Jake Taylor and all the problems he has. Maybe they can find some something in the run game. And I'm not talking about breaking off big long runs, but run for 3-4 yards on first down. I think that you'd feel a little bit better about this offense just getting some first downs.
It seems like first and second down rather important this weekend. And Brent Venables was asked on Tuesday at his weekly press conference, just in terms of coming off of a bye week, you had to have some type of positive effort or reinforcement coming with the offense over these last 2 weeks, preparing for the Texas game on Saturday. And here's Brent Venables.
Doesn't hurt. It can only help. And I say that because there's a compound interest on the additional repetitions, mentally, physically, walkthroughs, team separate, scout work, the meeting rooms. Being able to kind of take without as much urgency in regards to something that, in game week, those 20 hours go by fast. And so an off week gives you a little bit more time, and maybe even for the coaches to do a good job of, some presentations that can make things easy, for the players to digest on areas that we got to improve and get better at. But we'll be, your expectation is you're going to be a better version. The other side of it is you're playing the most complete team that you've played to challenge you as well. So, but I'm excited about that. Again, we had a great week last week and a good start to our week yesterday, and I think that we'll have an opportunity to bring out the best in our guys.
Let's talk about it here as we roll into some actual headlines, storylines going into the weekend. Michael Hawkins going to make the first true freshman to make the start for Oklahoma in the history of the game, which is just kind of incredible when you think about it. You talk to 3 of those 6 guys that had made their first start or had started as redshirt freshmen within this game, And the numbers are Tink Collins, Eric Moore in 1995, Justin Fuente in 1996. And we were watching it in the lobby earlier today in the office. 22-point underdogs.
Crazy.
Oklahoma was winless going into the Cotton Bowl, which I can't imagine
0-4.
the fervor going into that. And John Blake, they end up getting the win in overtime. James Allen scores the walk-off touchdown. Nobody rushed the field that year like we saw in 2021. Rhett Bomar in 2005, Sam Bradford 2007, and Spencer Rattler obviously in 2020 in a four overtime game that probably isn't remembered adequately because of the zaniness that came with COVID. I know you like to use the COVID when we talk about it, but was there a common theme in talking to those guys and the tremendous ask that is coming for Michael Hawkins come Saturday?
I think first and foremost, it's kind of what I said earlier. It's obviously he has to go in and play great, and that's a tough ask, but the guys around him also have to play really well. And, I think Fuente and Bradford really talked about, look, OU, the strength of this team is the defense. Lean on that if you're Oklahoma. Make it easier for Michael Hawkins. Give him some easy throws early in the game. Let him get settled in. But they also said there's no real settling into this game. The build-up for it, obviously you want to go about your week preparing really well, be focused, but treat it like any other week, right? And I know it's not. They all said, we know it's not any other week, but, prepare like it is, because then once you get to it, all the pomp and circumstance leading up to the game, the bus ride in, going down the ramp, next to your opponent, running out on the field, all of that leading into it, there's no way to really get settled in until you just get hit. Like, I think that was Sam that told me that. He's like, until you get out there and you just take one.
It's like, oh, okay, this is just a football game.
It's just a
game
football
I've been
game.
playing since I was a young kid.
And I think that, and they all talked about this, they don't know Michael Hawkins, but from the outside looking in, they see what we've seen, which is a very calm demeanor, very poised kid. Nothing seems too big for him. Now, we'll see if that continues this week in the biggest game of his career and against, like Brent said, the most complete team that they might face all season. It's a tough ask, but I think if Oklahoma, all the people around him can play well, and also Seth Luttrell, Joe John Finley, get him settled into this game, then maybe you can have a big game from him. And I think what you can expect from him is, he doesn't turn the ball over, right? I think that's a huge part in this game. You don't need to be a hero, but don't turn the ball over. Take what's given to you, and just be smart. And I think Sam said it best. Just be yourself. Like, he's in this position for a reason. Oklahoma and Brent Venables are giving this opportunity to him for a reason. So embrace that. Embrace the tradition of the game, and just go out there and play.
It became rather obvious in talking to guys here over the last couple weeks, especially after the Tennessee game and the way that he came into the ball game and was kind of asked to dig Oklahoma out of the massive hole that they were already in because of the turnovers. It's become apparent. There's a lot of guys on this team that are big fans of him, and it happened almost immediately when he stepped on campus. We talked to a number of players as well as Brent Venables about the freshman quarterback going into Saturday earlier this week. Here it is.
Yeah, I thought that maybe the first game, first opportunity to get in is the one you calm down. You saw him when he got in the Tennessee game. And like I said, he was in fast forward on everything. And that's very normal. They get young guys get in a hurry sometimes and don't have the patience that a veteran necessarily would. But again, I'm glad we got 2 weeks just to, again, paint the picture. Mike's a very process-driven guy. He's always been mature beyond his years. I think he'll do a good job. I trust and have faith and belief in what I've seen, and he'll have trust and belief in the guys around him and the calls, and play the calls. Don't overcomplicate things, and again, don't try to win the game in the first quarter. And but he's a playmaker, and so you don't want to handcuff him either. And but again, don't let the emotions hijack what it takes to execute.
To say the least, I'm a major observer. And since Mike got here in the spring, just the way he carried himself and the way that he goes about his business is like literally close to none. Like, it's one of those guys you're like, oh, that's what you do as a quarterback. Like, that's what you do. He's a really good player. He's impressed me literally since the day I met him and the first day I saw him take snaps. Like, he's literally impressed me. So
I don't know if this sounds weird, but when I tell you I'm a fan of my teammate, like, I was a fan of him as soon as he stepped on the field. I mean, everybody was rooting for him after he got that touchdown. We was just like, the whole sideline got up. I don't know if y'all can replay the image of the game, but everyone was just super stoked that he did what he did and showed up, balled out. And, yeah, huge smile on his face afterwards. And seeing how he's putting his body on the line for every single yard, I mean, who doesn't want to play for, like, somebody like that? Like, you're going to put your body on the line for him because he's putting his body on the line for the team.
I would say his focus. He's really intentional with where he's focusing. And, as an offensive line, we're doing our best to make sure that he feels no pressure at all and can sit there comfortably.
Man, I went up to him after jumped over quite a few people, and I was like, man, I love the way you play. He puts his body on the line every single play, just like Jackson did. It's great to see someone who's willing to put their body willing to sacrifice their body to get a win.
The precision, the timing, the patience, the progression, all of those things that a quarterback has to have. And but I got faith. Again, he's he's a guy that easy guy to bet on, just from a maturity, process-driven, consistency, who he is, how he handles tough moments. He's got a lot of really good qualities that maybe sometimes a younger player doesn't have, but hadn't been there, done that, and so I'm not discounting that. And at some point, you can only do so much as a coach, and he's got to be willing to listen. But nothing that he's done up to this point would make me surprised that he wouldn't again follow the book, if you will.
You like a lot of what you hear when you hear the teammates, when you hear Brent Venables talking about Michael Hawkins. It's obviously a big ask, though, and then you do it, oh, by the way, without your top 5 wide receivers going into the game. It's hard to think or imagine how Oklahoma can find success or just immediately get this thing going with Mike Hawkins under center. It might not matter who's under center. It's going to be kind of fun, though, to see how much they do try to throw in this week for the offense to try to get this thing sparked. And, to a certain extent, through the first 6 quarters, it's something we've talked about here throughout the week and even through the bye week last week coming out of the Auburn game. The overall numbers have been pretty good. He's completed a lot of passes. Last week against Auburn, or 2 weeks ago, I guess it would have been, the numbers probably would have been a little bit better. Big plays were wiped out because of penalties, and that's an obvious answer here, but you got to be able to stay away from the drive killers this week.
Oh, 100%. And look, there's no sugarcoating it. This is going to be really difficult for Oklahoma to win this football game, right? Like it is a tall task for Michael Hawkins, but I do think when you hear the players, you hear Brent Venables talk about Mike Hawkins, he's given them some hope. And I know that's weird to say in just 6 quarters of play.
I think that's the right way to say it, though.
Yeah, it's almost like he's galvanized the team in this short period of time. And that doesn't mean he's going to go out and just be unbelievable on Saturday. But I do think it gives them this little hope in their minds that say, hey, we've got a guy at quarterback that, one, can take it the distance on any given play, anytime he touches the ball, which kind of reminds you a little bit of Kyler Murray. It's like anytime this guy has the ball in his hands, he can do something special with it. And I think that the bye week gave them a chance to say, okay, here's what we're good at, which is not a lot, and here's what we're bad at, which is a lot, and here's maybe how we can fix it or add some things. Again, I don't think they're going to go out there and totally change what they're doing offensively. You can't do that midseason, but I do think there's some small things that they can fix. There's some things that they can add that maybe help Michael Hawkins in this game and help this offense move the ball a little bit more.
And one of the reasons that you talk about the way that they talk about him is, I think, just the poise, just everybody has seen on television or in the stadium if you were at Auburn or here in Norman for the Tennessee game. That was a tough ask, and he looked like a very cool customer in what he was being asked to do.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Bradford, again, I keep bringing it up. Go check out the store on SoonerScoop.com, but he was like, look, I'm so impressed by him. He was there at the game, and he said to come into the game at that point, that's one of the most difficult things you can do as a young quarterback. So for him to come into that game, lead him back into that game where it was somewhat close at the end, and then go on the road and perform as well as he did, it's huge. And I think you look at Mike's career going back to his time at Frisco Emerson, that's how he was. I think I said the stat on a couple of our shows this week, but 55 total touchdowns, only I think 4 total turnovers, 3 of those interceptions, 1 fumble in his career or as a senior. That tells you this guy holds on to the football, he's smart with it, and he's an electric playmaker. And so I think that poise, that calmness, his demeanor where he doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, you hear that a lot in this game, but it's true with him, I think speaks volumes about him and why there's some confidence going into such a huge game that he'll be able to handle it.
Here is Brent Venables as well as a couple more of Michael Hawkins' teammates just talking about the freshman quarterback going into Saturday.
I would say it's non-traditional in a quarterback. It's no reaction. He just brushes it off. It's weird. It's truly weird. If you see any other quarterback on like Sundays and Saturdays, if they make a mistake, it literally looks like their world just ended. Yeah. And he just, okay, next play. Okay, I messed up, next play. Yeah. That series he literally looks the same every series. The dude literally got helicoptered and got up and celebrated. I mean, he's a good player.
I mean, he's handled it with, first-class mentality. Mike's a soft-spoken guy. Not a lot has changed with his approach. He's the same guy every day, and he's showing up, and he's doing great work. So I think he's really embraced it, and, stepping into a little more vocal leadership role. I think he's doing a great job, and like I said, kind of preparing like any other week, and, he's just being himself.
I'd like to say I'm pretty calm during the game. They helped me with that, though, like the O-line, the receivers, just the defense as well, just making me comfortable and have my back in adversity. So I say they're a big part of that.
His poise is taking care of the ball, playing aggressive still, though, not playing on his heels, still playing aggressive, believing in himself, taking care of the ball, and then being coachable through all of it. And you'll be the first one to say, man, I missed that here and there on this game and this series, and should have made that play, should have made that decision. But those are the two of the biggest. I think they're really important. That's what you can win a lot of games when you take care of the ball and you play within the system. You don't do something that's crazy. But we've done some things where, our first read is obvious, and we're not reading there either. But what I like about Mike is he owns it first of all, no excuses, and then he corrects it.
I say my dad, ever since I grew up, he has always put me in situations where there's a ton of adversity and that I need to overcome. So I mean, I've always been calm growing up and trying to learn to be calm in my childhood and even in high school. So he's been a big part of that, even my mom too.
Have you seen him become any more vocal these last couple weeks?
He's been vocal since he got here. That, I'm telling you, he's a freshman who's literally been vocal since he got here. He literally doesn't take a back seat. Really good player. He doesn't say, he's like Billy. It's the best I can give it to you. Doesn't say a lot, but when he says something, you're like, oh, okay, I got you. Okay.
I know we've said it before, but Kobe McKenzie might be turning into one of the best interviews on the football team, and he obviously has a lot of respect and appreciation for Michael Hawkins Jr.
Yeah, it's abundantly clear. I think not only Kobe, but a lot of these guys, I think that, I don't know if inspired's the right word, but they definitely have rallied around Michael Hawkins. I think that they've seen him, you heard some of those guys say earlier, put his body on the line and the way that he plays the game. And then I think just his attitude, his personality, where things don't get to him. I think that guys really respect that. And like I said, I think it's given them some hope moving forward.
You want to write your name in the record books, the history books, if they're still making books that do that kind of stuff. No bigger stage than the Cotton Bowl. It's going to be super interesting to see how this offense can put it all together on Saturday. Now before we get to the Joe Cook interview, which was a great catch-up, let us tell you about Prize Picks. All you got to do is go to download Prize Picks or go to the website, prizepicks.com. Put $5 in, you get $50 back instantly using the promo code SoonerScoop, as you see behind me on the screen here. We've had a pretty good run.
I've been giving out some winners this year.
You've been giving out some winners. What are we going with this week?
I'm doing OU Texas this week.
Okay.
So I'm taking Michael Hawkins over rushing yards 49.5.
Okay,
I think he's going to be able
like
to run
that.
the football a little bit in this game. In fact, I think he's going to be the leading rusher in this game. On the flip side, I'm taking the under on Jaden Blue, 99.5 rushing yards. I think Oklahoma's going to find some success in stopping Texas's run game.
Obviously, that will be rather important for Oklahoma. I'm going to go with Derrick Henry over 0.5 touchdowns against Cleveland. It seems like Baltimore is a little bit of a horse right now, and Cleveland not so much. We'll go over. Just needs to find the end zone once. That's rushing or passing.
He's had a great year so far.
And then let's go Kyler Murray at Lambeau Field coming up this weekend. Let's go over 1.5 passing touchdowns. In fact, I'll just tell you right now, I like the Cardinals to win straight up. A little back-to-back week upset.
Kyler's been playing really well this year.
Yeah, the Cardinals not so much.
Yeah, the Cardinals are not a great football team, but Kyler's been playing pretty damn good.
They beat San Francisco last week, though. That was a nice upset as they go up to take on Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. All you got to do is go to download the Prize Pick app or go to prizepicks.com and use the promo code SoonerScoop. $5, get $50 instantly. Pretty good deal, and we just gave you some winners that I'm sure will hit, and if they don't, we will never talk about it again.
Leave a comment below.
Leave a comment. There's not enough comments on the YouTube show here that we respect. You know what I mean? All right, let's get to it. We caught up. It must be OU Texas week if we caught up with our buddy Joe Cook from Inside Texas to learn a little bit more about the #1 ranked Longhorns. We now welcome in Joe Cook. Always good to catch up with you. It must mean that it's OU Texas week, Joe. Welcome in. Thanks for joining us. Texas, #1 team in the country, first time in 40 years, nearly 40 years that they go into the Cotton Bowl as the #1 team. And, I guess from where this conversation has evolved over the last couple of years, I think that we're past the point of is Texas back, obviously with the success that they had getting to a semifinal. Just how different has this been in terms of what Sark's been able to do with Texas here over the last couple of years? And certainly heading into this game, it seems like this thing is rolling right now in Austin.
Yeah, the conversation kind of changes a lot around Texas football. It's like, what's wrong? Why do they suck? Why is everything going wrong? Why do they continue to be a punching bag? That's all changed now. It's what's the weaknesses? What are the discrepancies? What are the areas where Texas really needs to shore up? It's a lot different conversation. And I think that really got to that point ahead of last year. And again, as a lot of your friends over on the Crimson Corner will tell me, even last year, Oklahoma still beat the Longhorns. So, but with this team, like the recruiting seems on a good track. The coordination on both sides seems like it is on a good track. And it's to a point where the Longhorns are #1 in the country for the first time in 40 years heading into this game. The last time they entered into this game ranked #1 in the country, it may have been before all three of us were born, but it wasn't without controversy.
Sure.
And I'm curious if, I know there's no chance for a tie this time, but I'm hoping we get to see something as entertaining as a 15-15 tie in some form or fashion this weekend. But still, Sark has built a program that is a lot different than his previous two predecessors, and even than the one that Mac Brown had kind of toward the end of his tenure after that national title appearance. It's a program that makes use of recruiting, makes use of the portal, and makes use of really good schemes to be a tough out for anybody on their schedule.
It seems like the culture at Texas has really shifted, Joe. I don't know if you felt that and you kind of spoke to that, but do you feel like that's kind of the sense around that program, is that the culture, the belief in being able to win? I know they lost to OU last year in what was just kind of a crazy game, but to respond, I thought that was kind of the biggest curve for them was the rest of the season.
And finding ways to win some of those games that were, close and late in fourth quarter games, or pulling it out at overtime.
Exactly. I feel like that's been the biggest difference, Joe.
Yeah, that used to be a team that would kind of tuck their tail in and go home. And that was, you talk about some of those close games last year, that was with Quinn Ewers out. It's kind of its own issue at this point. But they still were able to eke things out. Of course, I was with guys like Tavondre Sweat and Byron Murphy. But there used to be a culture to where, Texas would lose this game, dedicate attention to this game, and then things would go off the rails. And you even saw that in 2021. Casey Thompson, current OU quarterback, has 6 touchdown passes, I think, in 2021. And then things go south. Caleb does what he does in Crimson and Cream. And then Longhorns lose about like 5 more games in a row to not even make a bowl. A few years later, they're on their way to making the college football playoff, to doing a lot of different great things in this program that has not been seen in some time. Top 5 finishes, draft picks going to the NFL. So I really do feel like the culture has shifted in a way to where, they're a little bit more robust, but at the same time, they do still have higher aspirations. One of those higher aspirations is getting some revenge from this game from last year.
It would seem that, at least to everybody in Norman covering OU, it didn't seem like it was much of a controversial decision that Quinn Ewers would be back, that he would be the starting quarterback going into Saturday. He was playing so well before the injury. It doesn't seem like there is any concern about rust or anything like that, but just in terms of where this offense is at moving forward into the game on Saturday, is it kind of expected that he just picks up where he left off before getting injured?
Hard not to look at some of the other games where he's come back from injury and returned in that regular season and done really well. One of those was the 49-0 game.
Sure.
The other one was a game last year against TCU. He's got about like 300-ish yards per game in those return from injury contests. I probably think he could have played against Mississippi State, but Texas didn't need him. And when you have someone like Arch Manning, that's a luxury. You can do things like that. But the other thing is, if you ask Arch Manning, and we did after that Mississippi State game, like, who is the starting quarterback? He did admit in so many words, like, Quinn is our quarterback one. Steve Sarkisian's even said on a variety of platforms that to get to where Texas wants to go, they need Quinn Ewers as their starting quarterback. So there's no controversy on that front. Quinn is the starter. As far as rust or anything like that, he probably could have played against Mississippi State. Like I said, I feel like he's practiced a good amount to where he understands what's coming. He's not. This injury doesn't seem as severe as his other previous two. The one caused by Dallas Turner, the other caused by the Houston defense kind of on the turf. Like, he seems like he's in a little bit better state. They gave him the week to, utilize someone like Arch Manning, and now they have him coming back to where I think that he understands not only what's on the line for this team, what's on the line for himself, as far as like a draft prospect, but also what's on the line for his legacy. George, I remember you wrote a lot about how Dylan was really, really, I don't want to say hesitant. I don't want to say like remorseful, but like he knew that game last year meant a lot for him.
Yeah.
And I put it on y'all's board that like he posted a career high in rushing yards. And I'm sure a lot of that mattered to him because it was key. It was what led the Sooners to victory last year. I would not be surprised if Quinn, knowing his place as a Longhorn with a right side up tattoo of a Longhorn on his thigh, I know he understands what's going on in this game, and I wouldn't be surprised if not only he returns, but also tries to save one of his better performances of his career for this contest.
Joe, we know who it's going to be at quarterback for the Longhorns, but I'm interested in the rest of this cast on offense because I feel like this offensive line has really made a jump from a year ago. Experienced group, obviously very talented. They've played extremely well, but then you look at the running back situation, very similar to the wide receiver position for Oklahoma, decimated with injuries. Then you look at the receiver position. They replaced a lot of guys, but it feels like they still have a ton of playmakers. Isaiah Bond, I know, kind of leads that group. Tell us about the rest of the offense and how they've been able to kind of keep this thing moving in the right direction under Sark.
So running back, it is missing C.J. Baxter, a guy that they had behind Jonathan Brooks last year, was lost to a knee injury during training camp. It's also missing Christian Clark, a true freshman they had very high aspirations for, had an Achilles injury during camp. So that meant that Jaden Blue, Trey Wisner, and Jarrett Gibson were going to be their top three guys. And Jaden Blue is the most talented of that bunch, without a doubt, but he has had major ball security issues. And that's not just fumbling. He had 2 fumbles against Mississippi State. That's just straight up catching the ball. He's had some bad drops. He had some ball security issues last year against Washington in the college football playoff after Jonathan Brooks went down. He's their best running back, though. So they understand that they need to get him going and in a ball security fashion ahead of this game because they understand that this team needs Jaden Blue. Trey Wisner, a little bit more multifaceted, a football player without a doubt. Someone who, if you watch tape from last year, he got some carries, but he made his best plays on special teams just by being a football player. And then Jarrett Gibson is a true freshman, came out of IMG Academy, can really run when he knows where to run. On zone plays, it's not so great. And on pass plays, when he has to protect, it's been pretty bad. So this game is going to look at Jaden Blue a lot to shore up the areas where he struggled the most, and that's ball security. He has speed, he has wiggle, he has all that, but he's got to show some toughness between the tackles, and he has to hang on to the dang football. Looking at wide receiver, one of the things I posted on y'all's board the other day was that there was a little bit of a multifaceted wide receiver group last year. You had the speedster in Xavier Worthy, who's making plays for the Chiefs right now. You had a little bit of a multifaceted guy in Adonai Mitchell, who's on the Colts. And then you had a little bit of a mobile fullback in Jordan Whittington, who's now on the Rams. Now it's a lot of speed guys. And it's not just 3, it's 6. Your top 3 are Isaiah Bond, kind of a like for like with Worthy, to be honest. Matthew Golden, a Houston transfer, and DeAndre Moore. He may have been an OU commit at the time, then to Louisville, and then to Texas at a certain point. He's your slot guy. He tries to be like Jordan Whittington. You have 3 more behind them. Silas Bolden, Oregon State transfer, a little bit more diminutive, a little bit more of a speed guy. Ryan Wingo, 5-star with a bright future, and Jonte Cook, another former 5-star with a bright future. It's a little bit less multifaceted. You're looking at a lot of speed guys, a lot of guys who just try to get open, try to get downfield, try to make the most of when they're in open space instead of making use of physicality. But it's 6 instead of 3. That's a big change for Steve Sarkisian. But I think, as y'all have mentioned, both on our board over on IT and on the corner, that Isaiah Bond is kind of where it starts. But there's a lot of like 2A, 2B, 2C, 2C, 2D, 2E, that type of guy in the Longhorn wide receiver core.
I think for Oklahoma too, defensively, and looking what Texas has offensively, you saw Gunnar Helm a year ago and the way that Texas used him. Obviously, had Sanders as well at the tight end position. He was a little nicked up. I think that allowed Gunnar Helm to play a little bit more. How much has he been involved in the offense? I'm sure that Arch used him as maybe a little bit more of a safety blanket here over the last couple weeks. How do you see him kind of playing into the game plan for Texas on Saturday?
I'm not sure if he's going to be a primary option like Jatavian Sanders was very often last year. You know, there are not a ton of 100-yard games by tight ends in the history of the Longhorn football program, and I think Jatavian Sanders has a handful of them. But Gunnar Helm has earned trust as a more than capable, not even a check down, a more than capable option for this offense. I think he had 90 yards or something like that at Michigan, and then has performed well. Even when the game plan doesn't look short, Gunnar Helm has done his job. He's been that type of every down tight end. This could be another game where he finds his opportunities. Last year was a little bit of a surprise, and I know one of those plays was a wildcat play.
Sure.
But last year was a little bit of a surprise to see Helm take such a highlighted spot within the Longhorn offense. They have full faith in him. They have full confidence in him. He's not the same type of prospect as Jatavian Sanders, but Steve Sarkisian says that behind quarterback, as far as the number 1 most important spot in the offense, tight end might be number 2. And so for them to rely on Gunnar Helm, that means they have a lot of faith in what he does as a blocker and as a receiver. It also just helps to have a 4th-year guy in that role. There are a lot of positions in football where having an old man helps. That's definitely one of them. And Gunnar Helm, class of 2021 guy, like Jatavian Sanders is a plus in that regard.
Joe, on the other side of the ball defensively, I feel like the narrative around Texas was, well, they lose Sweat and they lose Murphy. They're going to take a drop off. Jalen Ford as well was a really good player for him at linebacker. It feels like, though, they were able to go out, get some guys in the portal. Obviously, Jermaine Lole, who was originally committed to Oklahoma. I know he's playing a little bit for Texas. You got Colin Simmons, the super talented freshman on the edge. I mean, just big-time ball player. Anthony Hill at linebacker. Tell us about this Texas defense. They statistically, I know they haven't faced a ton of great offenses. That's been the narrative.
They're not going to on Saturday either.
No, but like what has made this Texas defense? I mean, statistically, they are up there with some of the best defenses in the country. What's made them so good so far this year?
We'll start at defensive tackle. I will freely admit that Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, they are not the same players as Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat. But that doesn't mean they're bad. They're playing good football. They're holding up against the run. I think that Michigan game, for what they try to do on offense, that proved that. At the same time, I think they have a lot better help, both at the edge spot and even, you could argue maybe at the linebacker spot. Trey Moore is the first string guy on that boundary edge position, and he does not have the stats, and that's been something Texas fans have complained about. But if you watch him, he does his job. Same with Barron Sorrell. And so I think that entire four-man offense or defensive line has done a really good job this year to make life difficult on opponents. Colin Simmons, Eddie, like you said, a lot of flash plays. That first step is special. If it is a passing down, they move him around like another number 11 that people may see in Dallas from time to time, and Micah Parsons. They move him around. He's not the same prospect quite yet, obviously, but they like to utilize him in a way to get him the best matchup. He's been special on pass rushing downs. And then Anthony Hill has been playing really well. Over in kind of the Texas world, people saw Gabe Eichard's comments about him being the worst player on defense, and they kind of took it within stride and understood, like, that doesn't mean he's a bad player. Kind of speaks a lot about the Texas defensive front, but it also says that Anthony Hill does a lot of athlete stuff as opposed to linebacker stuff. Even so, he started to make more linebacker plays. I've kind of envisioned him as a guy who can make an all-conference team this year, and I think he's starting to do more and more of that. David Bida, the guy who he fell on the sword, for lack of a better term, on Nick Anderson's touchdown reception last year. He's been playing really well. The linebackers have been playing well. But on that defensive front, the star power may not be there. And I think a lot of Texas fans and Texas observers would tell you that. But they understand, and to Pete Kwiatkowski's credit, they seem to understand a little bit more how to pair what the strengths are with what's going on in the back end. And there's a lot of experience in that back end.
Yeah, it certainly seems like there is a ton of experience. Obviously, went out and got some guys in the portal. You've had Malik Muhammad and Jahdae Barron have played excellent. Just in terms of secondary-wise, where is this Texas unit at right now?
Every year, and I'm sure it's the same for y'all, you always hear about a defensive backfield talk about, like, oh, we got to communicate better. We got to communicate better. And they say that in week 7 and week 8 and week 9 and week 10 and week 11 and then in the spring ball and preseason. Like, you hear that all the dang time. This Texas defense does communicate well, and I think it's coordinated well. I think that Pete Kwiatkowski kind of understands what this team is good at in a little bit better sense than he may have in years past. And at the same time, the youngest guy who's playing in this defense is a second-year field corner in Malik Muhammad. He's done really well. Texas corners have not been tested a ton, and that says something about their opponents. Like, sure, they've not gone against a really good passing offense or an average passing offense by any stretch of the imagination. But teams have not tested Malik Muhammad and Jahdae Barron. They really, if anybody, they test Jalen Gilbo at star, and he's had good backup in Michael Taft, Derek Williams, Andrew Makuba, all those guys, to where nothing's really been given up as far as deep plays. The secondary seems to have a really good understanding, but and you know, I've read a lot of what y'all have written about this offense. Who knows if this is the quarterback, if this is, you know, the walking wounded wide receiver core to really test that secondary. If Nick Anderson and Deion Burks and Andrew Anthony were all back, this would be one of the most fun matchups to really check. Who knows what they're going to be like this upcoming week? And because of that, like I see a pretty good advantage for the Texas secondary. Now, if one of those guys is back, they definitely deserve a lot of really good special attention. If not, then, Texas knows what Brennan Thompson provides. Texas understands what some of those other guys provides. And I really never, ever want to try to sound arrogant on that front, but there's a difference between first stringers and second stringers in the SEC. And I think y'all have seen that play out over the course of the past few weeks.
Yeah. We definitely have.
And, unfortunately, I guess for Oklahoma fans, maybe fortunately for Texas fans, I think you could probably disqualify two of the three. I don't think Andrell Anthony and Jane Gibson are going to be Nick Anderson going to be, certainly Jane Gibson. There's so many of them are going to be part of the game plan. We'll see about Deion Burks moving forward. It's going to be interesting to see how Oklahoma tries to attack this thing, or where do you even begin? I really don't know.
Well, what I wanted to ask off that, Joe, is it feels like if Oklahoma's going to win this game or have a chance to win this game, special teams is a spot that I think that they have to win that battle. And we've seen it. We've been to this game. There's been a lot of big special teams plays that sometimes determine the outcome of the game. Tell us a little bit about Texas special teams. I don't think we know almost anything about them. I know
familiar name in Bert Auburn, but he hasn't really had to do a whole lot. Has he really only kicked 3 field goals this year?
He has, and part of that's a little bit of a testament to Texas not just stalling out in the red zone as we saw last year.
Sure.
But at the same time, Will Stone on kickoff, for the most part, just booting balls out the back of the end zone. Even if he doesn't boot it out the back of the end zone, teams are fair catching it against them. I'm curious if Oklahoma does the same. On punt return for Texas, Silas Bolden has not been as high quality as Xavier Worthy. He's bold, I guess to say. You see him jump on footballs that may be a little risky. He tries to take some returns that might be a little risky. But by the same token, that's where Jeff Banks really tries to find some hidden yardage. The place to test Texas on special teams is when Texas is punting. Last year, they had a grad transfer in Ryan Sanborn, who was more than solid, did a whole lot of great things. Before that, they had Cameron Dicker. This year, they have a true freshman in Michael Kern, and he's done okay. It's not like he's punted anything spectacular. His stats probably, when you're looking at averages and inside the 20 and fair catch and all that, probably look okay. That is someone who has not been tested, whether it was at Michigan in the only hostile environment that Texas has been in, or just in general. That's someone who has not really had his feet or foot put to the fire as far as, can you punt? Can you do your job in a pressure situation? So, thinking honestly, Oklahoma would be pretty smart to probably put a lot of pressure on a true freshman punter in the Cotton Bowl, especially if there's a situation where Texas is in that Oklahoma side of the field, is hearing the noise, it's 3rd and long, there's no chance for a fake. Put it on number 39. Say, do your job, buddy, and you got to deal with a lot of guys in crimson and cream heading your way.
I would imagine that I get the feeling, and just talking to some of the people on your guys' board and just kind of the tenor that is out there on Texas right now, there's a lot of confidence, obviously, and for every reason so going into the Cotton Bowl. These next 2 weeks, though, for maybe the people that are being pessimistic about it, is this kind of a prove it, this is a team that can go win a national championship if you go down to the Cotton Bowl, take care of business, which they're supposed to, and then obviously have the big one with Georgia in 2 weeks?
Man, y'all guys know me. I am all about, in college football, you have to beat your rivals.
Sure.
You have to beat your rivals.
Is that a thing within the Texas fan base, just in terms of we've talked about 5 of the last 6, 7 of the last 11, or whatever it is, 17 of the last 25. Would there be an undertone if Texas did go and lose the Cotton Bowl that all of a sudden they do have this OU problem?
Are those the numbers?
Yeah. Is it? Is it? Did I get it wrong? I'm not known for the math stuff.
But
it's
y'all
crazy
understand,
though.
that is one of beat your rivals. That's what makes college football college football. And since Texas A&M left the Big 12 for the SEC, the rivalry game for the Longhorns has been Oklahoma, and they've not been, in the 2010s and a lot of the 2020s as good as Oklahoma on the field and in a lot of different aspects. So beating your rivals is especially important. And I think there are a lot of Texas fans who they can look at last year and they can see they won the Big 12, something they haven't done in 14 years, and be extremely happy. Go to the college football playoff, be on the way to great things as we perceive them in the SEC and stuff like that. There are probably a lot of fans, though, who look at Steve Sarkisian at being 1-2 in this game, and the only win was against Davis Bevel in that game, and think, we need to win this game. I feel like a lot of Texas fans understand that. So as far as like pressure, I think it's just the regular pressure that any Texas head coach would feel about this game and about this rivalry. And I think that's a something that Texas fans really, really understand. Like, they know that this is a game between two of the best programs in college football history, between a program that really has a lot of great things going for it in Oklahoma. Same thing can be said for Texas. But like, if you're Steve Sarkisian and you lose this game, you're 1-3 against Oklahoma, and you can put whatever you want to, whatever qualifiers about that game. 1-3 is 1-3 and 1-3. Like, this is a game Texas needs to win if it wants to become the type of program it wants to be. They'll worry about Georgia next week. They should worry about Georgia next week, and they should worry about Vanderbilt next week, which is as crazy of a sentence as I may have ever said to both of y'all. But like, at the same time, beat your dang rivals. That's what makes college football, and there's no bigger rival for Texas than Oklahoma.
Well, that about does it there. But
it's just a psychotic game, and I think that you've seen enough
awesome.
of these. Than the Charlie Strong experience, and he won a golden hat somehow, some way.
Yeah.
Thanks in part to, I think it was to Case McCoy. So it's going to be fun. And that's, I guess, the psychology of the whole thing is that OU fans, as bad as things have been here, they're still 4-1, which is kind of miraculous to think about the way that they did it, and still like kind of psych yourself into thinking that they do have a chance, even though they're a 14.5 win.
Yeah, and I think in Joe, I've listened to Sark talk about this week, and some of the players, like, the 14-point spread doesn't mean anything
I think
to
we're the
anybody.
only people that talk about it. Everybody outside of the two facilities talks about it.
Yeah, unless you're just a big time gambler, like, that line means nothing.
Did y'all see David Benda, who I mentioned?
Great clip.
Who gets a lot of blame for that Nick Anderson touchdown catch. Someone's like, hey, did you know you're 14-point favorites? And he's from Katy Made Creek, or not Made Creek, Cinco Ranch. One of my favorite guys to talk to. And he goes like, what do you mean? I'm like, who are the bettors? And I said, gamblers. He goes, gamblers? Like, no. and so like that's one of those things where we hear that so much about, like, 14.5 point favorite, you're 2 touchdown spread, all that stuff. And I'm sure it's the same thing up in Norman, but like, there's so much from this game that is insulated to the players' ears that it makes it very, very interesting, to where I'm sure all three of us have told players like, hey, did you know this? And they go, oh, really? It's like, we've been focused on this. And I kind of took that approach with the Stutzman t-shirts from last year. And Texas tries to take like the diplomatic approach, like, it's a rivalry. We take everything seriously. There was one guy, Michael Taff, who goes like, I remember it. And it's like, don't worry, I remember them printing those t-shirts and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where, like, you can still see the diplomacy of college football and not trying to give bulletin board material and stuff like that. But at the same time, everybody still understands the rivalry, what this means, all that stuff. And between Wax Cup beers and corny dogs, which apparently neither head coach has had, this is what makes this one of the most fun weekends of the year for all of us.
It's truly the best. Maybe next week you can go over under and totals with David, and maybe just it'll be a gambler's guide each.
What
week.
are your best bets?
Yeah. Well, you doing a pick 7 this week? Go over to Santa Anita or something. All right, he's Joe Cook, Inside Texas. We'll look forward to it on Saturday. We'll see you at the Cotton Bowl for the yearly experience that is OU Texas. We appreciate it, man.
Eddie, George, appreciate y'all.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Joe.
See ya. Love catching up with Joe Cook. Does a really good job for Inside Texas. It's going to be fun to see him on Saturday. It's kind of like a reunion of sorts when you go down to the Cotton Bowl to see everybody that you really haven't seen in about a year. But OU, defensively, certainly that's going to be the if you're not looking at the Oklahoma offense, the Oklahoma defense, if you're going to say, yeah, they have a chance on Saturday, it's because of this turnaround that Oklahoma has undertaken in the third year under Brent Venables. And, we'll see. As we've talked about with Joe Cook, Quinn Ewers coming back, having missed the last couple weeks. Do you worry about some rust? Can you get after Quinn Ewers? Oklahoma sacked him 5 times last year, had 10 tackles for loss. It was a really good defensive performance that, in turn, kept him in the bowl game.
It's going to be really interesting, Eddie, what Oklahoma's game plan is defensively. Are they going to bring extra pressure? Are they going to bring a Danny Stutzman on a blitz? Are we going to see Dasan McCullough in some different packages? Can they get to Ewers if they don't bring any extra pressure, if they just have a 4-man rush or a 3-man rush or whatever it is? That, to me, is going to be really intriguing because I think that Brent's going to want to bring some pressure. But then you are susceptible on the back end and Isaiah Bond and the playmaker that he is and all the speed that we heard about from Joe. That worries you a little bit, especially when you have a secondary that has given up some big plays. So are you going to drop back in coverage? Are you going to come after Quinn Ewers? That, to me, is the big question because I do think if you can get pressure on him, however that is, whether that's a 4-man rush or extra blitzes or stunts or whatever, he'll make some mistakes. We saw that in the game a year ago. We've seen that throughout his career. He's not as mobile. He's mobile, but not as mobile as maybe an Arch Manning and obviously a Mike Hawkins. But I think that Oklahoma can maybe have some success in their front 7. I think it's going to be difficult to run the ball on Oklahoma in this game. So that, to me, if Oklahoma's going to win this football game, they've got to create some turnovers, create some big plays defensively, set Oklahoma up, maybe play some field position. I thought it was interesting, Joe, talking about the punting situation for Texas. That's always a huge part of this football game. If you can play some field position, maybe set up a struggling offense with some short fields, all of a sudden, maybe you can be in this football game late in the fourth quarter.
All 3 phases of the game, rather important when you go down to the Cotton Bowl. Here is a little bit of a smorgasbord type notebook with a bunch of OU defenders talking about Texas offensively.
Going to play a great Texas team that's playing incredibly well. I think they've won 19 of their last 22 games. Coach Sarkisian and their staff have done a really nice job. With a really good team. It's a veteran team. I think 21 of their top 22 guys on offense and defense are juniors and seniors. So a veteran team, 134 or so starts with their offensive line. And I think from an offensive standpoint, it's kind of all starts there. They've got really good players at every position, but the way they're playing up front, the cohesion, the chemistry, the physicality that they're playing, they kind of lead the way from an offensive standpoint, playing really well again on both sides, top 5 in the country, virtually in about every defensive and offensive category.
Going up against those Texas receivers, how excited are you guys about that matchup?
Yeah, I'm very excited. It's going to be a challenge, some great receivers, depth, got good young guys, got experience. But it's going to be a challenge, and, we're not backing down from nobody, so we're ready.
This is, one of the biggest games in college football? Who wouldn't be excited for that? But this is actually probably one of the reasons why I came here, to be honest, to play on a huge stage like that and prove to everybody that I can do what I can do.
Yeah, it's fun knowing you're the underdog. The underdog mentality is a great mentality to have, and I'm just excited to really play with these dogs that we got in the locker room this weekend.
Their success doesn't have anything to do with ours, and their lack of success doesn't have anything to do with ours. So we focus on us, the things that we can control. We compete on the field, once a season, and it's a big game, always is. But they're all big. Lose one of those other ones, and they all big. And but we don't measure our program to their program in any way, shape, or form.
On Tuesday, we talked a little bit about, just in terms of getting Deshaun back, what that could mean for OU defensively. Somebody that's had a really nice year so far, and, probably the box score wouldn't tell you how well he has actually played, is Trace Ford, and they moved him around quite a bit against Auburn.
He's been, honestly, what you expected probably a year ago, right?
Sure.
And I think that speaks to had a year under his belt. I think getting back from his injury history as well as just feeling more comfortable in what they're asking him to do. But all of a sudden you're seeing him play on the edge. You're seeing him play some like linebacker, some cheetah. Like they're playing him all over the place, and it's really helped him out. I think he's been really good in the pass rushing game. He's dropped back in coverage and done some nice things. He's a guy that on Saturday maybe he could make a game-changing play. You saw that against Tennessee. He forced that strip sack, and I think he had one against Auburn too, almost. He's been playing really well, and he's one of those veteran guys that has played in this game only one time, but he's played in a lot of big football games, and you hope that you can lean on some of that experience, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Not only Trace, but Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman. You heard from Billy; he's played in this game. This will be his fourth time, so he's played it in as much as anybody. Woody Washington, right? I mean, another guy that I know some people have been critical of him for some reason outside of the building, but I think that he's going to play a big role in this game. So all those veteran guys playing them in different spots. You're going to see guys move around. It's going to be huge, and then even the young guys, Eli Bowen. I think we're going to see a lot of Eli Bowen. True freshman out there, Samuel Mosigo, who's in his second year. We're going to see a lot of him out there. Jaden Jackson, obviously, true freshman. He's going to be out there a lot. So this defense, you got a lot of depth. You just hope that maybe they can make some big plays as they have in the first, 5 games.
One of those avenues for Oklahoma to find themselves, reclaiming the golden hat on Saturday evening. You would think that it's going to have to take one of those memorable efforts from maybe one of the guys that we've talked about before and some of the knowns, whether it be a Danny Stutzman or a Billy Bowman. You think back to, some of the guys in Oklahoma history that have kind of, we always think about the offensive guys, and obviously Dylan had that moment a year ago in the game-winning drive, but a defensive guy that comes up with the big interception, the Kip 6 like in Auburn to win improbably. You would think that to get over the finish line, they're going to have one of those plays that we walk in when we rejoin you on Saturday night and we're doing the instant reaction from the field at the Cotton Bowl, that it's like Oklahoma won because of this phenomenal, heroic play.
Yeah, you think back to some of the great plays that have been made in this game, and the Teddy Lehman interception, Roy Williams Superman play, something like that. Like,
sure.
I'm not saying they're going to recreate that on Saturday, but you never know.
Would be cool.
Would be pretty sweet, but you never know. And I think that's, heroes are made in this game. Guys go down in OU lore because of this game.
Sure.
And so you're hopeful that somebody can step up. Who's that going to be? There's always an unlikely hero, it feels like, in this game, whether it's, a defensive guy that comes out of nowhere to make a play or a special teams play. You think back to James Winchester falling on the muffed punt. What year was that? 2013, something like that.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Plays like that. You think back to Obo in 2017 and the game that he had, and
we were talking about that one in the uniform. I remember walking past him on the field, and it looked like he had just rolled around in the grass the entire day, just completely stained. One of the best pictures from OU Texas.
Yeah, it's always somebody that maybe you're not thinking about coming into the game. That doesn't mean that it can't be a Danny Stutzman or Billy Bowman.
Sure.
But if Oklahoma's going to win this game, there's going to be somebody that we're talking about after the game that be like, man, that guy came up with the play to help Oklahoma upset the Longhorns.
Oklahoma looking for the big upset on Saturday. It's nothing that is unfamiliar territory, right? This is a great stat that you had brought up here. Since 2000, 8 times there's been a double-digit underdog. Those double-digit underdogs are 2-6 straight up. But on the flip side, if you want to take the points this weekend, they are 6-2 in those games against the spread.
Now, I will say a lot of those games Texas was the underdog.
2013 and 2015 are the 2 victories for double-digit underdogs, both Texas wins.
Exactly.
And they had guys that kind of came out of nowhere to do that.
Yeah, when it's funny, and Tink Collins was saying this to me this week. He's like, I almost like it when we come into the game as an underdog, because there's a lot of times that OU comes in as the favorite and doesn't play up to expectations. And so I think Oklahoma definitely has a chip on their shoulder a little bit coming into this thing. I think Texas does too, the way that the game went a year ago. I feel like they certainly want some revenge. But look, the pressure, Corbett Davidson said it earlier this week when he joined us on Sooner Scoop YouTube channel, but he said that the pressure's all on Texas, right? Like they've had an Oklahoma problem. Like if they can't beat Oklahoma this year, then there's an issue, right? And so, Oklahoma's playing pressure free, I think, maybe not pressure free because it's always a big game.
I understand what you mean. I think there is more pressure on Texas not to go to the Cotton Bowl and lay an egg.
Exactly. And so if you're Oklahoma, you got to play free. Go out there like you have nothing to lose because you really don't. And I think that if they do that, then they can give themselves a chance to win.
No doubt. A great week of content here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel. Talked to Corby Davidson from The Ticket, the Hardline from 3 to 7. They're going to have Coach Switzer and the Boz on Thursday evening at 5:15. And then the family business, which I'm really excited to be able to sit down and watch. Joe Jr. as well as Isaac Stoops were able to sit down with Trey Millard, Kennedy Brooks, Drake Stoops, which all have had their
huge moments.
All three have had big moments at the Cotton Bowl.
Unlikely heroes, like I said, guys that maybe you weren't thinking about going into the game as having the game-saving plays, and each of those guys had huge plays in this game.
It's going to be fun. Can't wait. It's the best weekend of the year. We're headed down. We'll be down at the Fair on Friday to check out some of the scenes with some of our good friends. I think you'll probably know who we're talking about by the time that you watch this. And then, of course, the Cotton Bowl coming up on Saturday, 2:30 kickoff for the first time since 2017. OU, Texas. You can throw away all the record books, all that yada, yada, yada stuff. It should be fun. And then we'll be right back here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel for an instant reaction come Saturday evening. Might need some security to get out of the State Fair this year, too. I think it's going to be dark, so bring a flashlight.
Will do.
All right. For George, I'm Eddie. We'll see you next time here on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube channel.